Welcome to episode 1 of my side hustle, deciding what business to start on this channel, as well as some of the ideas from this video that you could use for your own venture. I think the smart people in the room would start with something already in place when deciding what they could start on the side. Maybe their major at university or day job or existing network leverage something already in place. I could also see how talented people could find business ideas in their hobbies and passions. Maybe they're really good with their hands, getting some good feedback on the internet, and now they could monetize their talents. Or perhaps more entrepreneurial people could try their hands in something with big momentum, something that's trending, new, and hot. But then there's this special group of people who just find a random post on Reddit about something they've never heard of before, get so excited that they, decide to give it a go. Now, this last way to go about this might seem pretty weird, but I think doesn't mean we cannot talk about not only why I think it could be a great opportunity for someone like me going this route, but also how some of these experiences could be applicable elsewhere, maybe for someone like you. So this past winter, I've been on Reddit and I found this post where a guy would generously share his experience of working freelance job, providing writing services to companies that are trying to sell their products, which some of you might know is called copywriting. But what really impressed me, what I got really excited about, is just how detailed the post and Q&A was on that post. And the guy went into whole details about what exactly he does, how he does it, what kind of clients he serves, and what these clients do, and where he finds these clients, and how much he makes. All these juicy details that you don't really see often. So naturally, as I was going through the post, I started thinking whether this is something I could do myself. And well, before we continue, I guess, what is exactly copywriting? It's very simple. It's just writing an ad, usually a longer form ad in text for someone else's product or service. And in this case, it's a very particular type of copywriting. It's a direct response copywriting, which means the people for whom you write the ad could track how much your ad generated in terms of sales. But it also he targets specifically people, like companies that advertise products in the finance and healthcare niches. And these companies do only online ads, and then they use landing pages as their advertisement tactic. So very specific, as I mentioned. Now, the first thing I wanted to know about it is what it takes to start working in this industry, what it takes to get the job done. And I think it comes down to 4 things. Number 1 is your ability to do research. And in this context, it has to do with how well you can browse the web, trying to find information about who buys, who sells, what kind of features are popular, what's not popular, what's trending, and so forth about whatever product that you're working on. Number 2 is about your ability to understand how to sell. And what I mean by that is, once you have information about the product and about competitors and about your target customer, you have to be able to put it all together and come up with an angle on the product you're trying to advertise that would show everyone why they should buy your specific product. Number 3 is writing, and that's where you take your angle and then you put it into use words and trying to write an ad where you would capture attention, and then you would convert that attention into a sale, hopefully. And number 4 is your ability to cold call and cold email people. And that has to do with getting clients for your own business, for whom you could write copies. You could go and just set up a profile on some of the job websites like Upwork. But this post specifically said that going cold call, cold email route is a better strategy. So okay, that's what it takes to get the job done. Then I obviously thought, how well does my situation stacks up against these requirements? Number 1 is research. I think everyone who went to school knows how to do research, more or less, has some experience with the research. But in my case, actually every desk job I had something to do with research, and especially a job at a research shop where I was covering all sorts of markets, I would do online and phone interviews trying to find market information like prices and sales numbers, market shares, trends, and so forth. So I actually done a fair share of market research in the past. In terms of what was the next one? In terms of the ability to sell, I also had a chance to work at a retail store for like almost 2 years full time, selling apparel. So, and one thing I definitely learned there, among others, is how you put the information about the product and the customer and competing offers and make an offer that should result in a sale. So that's good. And then in terms of writing, I think that might be the weakest point because I never really get paid to write. Like I was writing these research reports, but they were mostly like qualitative rather than persuasive kind of a writing. But I do actually occasionally get and randomly get praised for my writing in the work settings. Like people would say how easy it is to read my writing, like in emails, memos, or reports. And I think that has to do a lot with the way I just like to write, just like I talk. I think it's very easy to follow. And beside that, my friends and family actually would occasionally ask me to either proofread their stuff or help them write some things that they need for whatever that they need it for. So there is like, I think I don't want to say I have a knack for writing, but I do think there's like some potential there. And also in the Myers and Briggs personality framework, I am INFP type, which is like doubt to be the most useless type of them all for like many good reasons. But what's cool about it is that overwhelming majority of INFPs are actually writers or have a lot to do with writing. So I'll take that. Now, in terms of cold call and cold emails, I actually have done a lot of that in the past, way more than I wished. It doesn't get easier, but I think it shouldn't be a problem for me, especially that the guy on Reddit provided good examples and templates for how to go about it, so shouldn't be hard. So this is basically covers like how well I think I should be able to do the job, and I think it's far from perfect, but I think there's pieces in place, and I think it's worth trying. But obviously that doesn't mean like just because there's potential that I should just go ahead and do it. That's why I also thought about things like what are my interests and what is my objective? What is it I'm trying to do anyways? My timeline and like how realistic this all is, as well as whether I have like enough resources to support this venture. So, excuse me. So in terms of my interest, I actually never dreamed of being involved in sales or writing, but so I cannot really say this is like a passion project, but I think this is something I could see myself being good at, and I could see myself doing over a fairly extended period of time. And I think this is especially okay because this project is not really end game for me in and of itself, which brings me to my next point of what's my objective. And that has to do with, like, right now I think I'm in the middle of this stage where I'm primarily focused on converting my knowledge and skills into capital, which is very different from the last 10 years where I was primarily focused on converting my time and energy into skills and knowledge. And in the future, I want to be in a position where I could spend most of my time converting my knowledge and capital into solutions for some bigger problems, like just, for example, in the area of maybe education or healthcare or environment. So, and like on practice, it, from what I understand, comes down to either investing into certain types of startups or maybe doing my own startup. So that's kind of as far as the objective goes. What does it mean in terms of this specific side business? I think it's just, as long as the side business has enough potential and room for growth, that should be all right at this point. And it sounds like competent people in this field making like 6 figures working part-time, which is, I think, a really decent place to start. as well as what I like about it is that there is a natural extension from going from sole freelancer to maybe getting help and even setting up a small shop, which could become bigger over time. So I think the runway is like long and wide enough for my purpose. In terms of timeline, I'm in no particular rush. I have my main job and I don't really need to start making money, or like I don't really have any hard deadlines. So for me, it's more like a long-term project. So I think timeline is very relaxed for me, and which is good, because I don't think this is a fast money-making business, which I will touch upon at the end of this video. And so yeah, that's timeline. In terms of resources, like 6 months ago, actually I couldn't get this started because my main job was consuming all of me, but right now things change, and I think now there's a room for something like this. And what's probably my favorite part is that this type of businesses don't require much in the way of capital investment. I might want to buy some sort of a writing course to help me out with mechanics, because I was never really like trained to write. I might decide not to do that. We'll see about it. But that's, I think, all I could see in terms of capital, because I already have a laptop and internet, so all this stuff is already in place. And in terms of how realistic this is, right? I mean, first of all, direct response copywriting is as old as spam in your mailbox, and there is already like identified people in place who doing certain stuff and they need help with a specific thing, and then they're hiring for that specific thing, and then they're paying certain money for that. So there's like, I think all pieces already in place. I don't need to come up with anything. I don't need to bring anyone together. I just come in and compete for my piece of the market, right? To fulfill the demand. So I think it's highly realistic. Now, one issue I could see definitely is that maybe the Reddit post is inaccurate or just outright like misleading. But the thing is, I researched this topic outside of the Reddit post, as well as I've looked into the person who wrote that post and actually found who the person is and got the information about him. So not only like everything I read in that post made sense to me just based on my experience working for the past like I don't know how long, like 5-6 years. But then also what I saw about that person really, doesn't give me any indication that this could be some kind of a misleading information. So I think it's good enough to try it out at this point. Related to that, I hear sometimes when people ask questions like why someone would share valuable information of how to become successful in something with some random strangers, especially when it could mean more competition for them. I could see how it's a concern and how this is like a really important question for some people. In my experience, what I see sometimes is that you don't have to believe in one's altruism in order to like believe someone's information like this. I think what happens, some successful people get to a point where more of the same success is just not fulfilling anymore, and they're looking for more ways to like add meaning to whatever that they do, and helping others could become one of the ways they accomplish that. So, and I'd like to think that this is the case here as well. So there you go. I think this is basically it in terms of how I found the post, and then why I think it's a good idea for me to try it out. Now, chances are copywriting, direct response copywriting in particular, might not be something you are, thrilled about, and I think that's fine. What's cool is I think there's good ideas in this video that could be applied elsewhere in whatever niche you might go into. I think the biggest one is to try and define your niche as much as possible. I think going general is perfectly fine, but it just will take you longer time to figure out, what are the sweetest spots for you given your situation. And like take copywriting as an example. It's actually a really big industry with many ways to go about working in it. You could be a brand awareness copywriter. You could be working with e-commerce websites or like bloggers, local businesses, and maybe, physical mail, online ads, gajillions of ways to kind of slice and dice it. And some spots are going to be sweeter for you than others. Like in this case, this guy talks about specifically direct response copywriting online for products in health and finance niches for companies that do use landing pages as a tactic. So very specific. And in fact, he said he worked in the industry for 10 years, but it's only in the last 2 he's been making good money. And that's when he identified this niche and this way of, getting the clients. So by leveraging his experience, I could definitely jumpstart, my venture into the world of copywriting. And I think it could be, I don't see why it couldn't be, replicated across any niche. And the way you would go about it, just find someone successful in a niche you're interested in, someone who is willing to help, and someone who is somebody you could trust, right? And easier said than done, but I think it's particularly easier for people who like to network. But even if not, like in my case, I would just rely on the internet. Like I found it on Reddit. The way I found him is I actually just discovered Reddit back then, and then I found a subreddit called Our Entrepreneurship, and I like that subreddit a lot. There's a lot of good information in there, and I think I just filtered the whole subreddit by like top posts, and I started going down the list, and this post was like, and I got to this post at some point, and that's when it all started for me. So maybe you don't like Reddit, but I don't see why you cannot find something on maybe YouTube or maybe Instagram even. There's a lot of business right now happening there. LinkedIn, whatever platform you spend your time, and just try to see if you could, find something related to this. Now, related to that is, what if you don't want to be involved in something that has to do with sales or writing? I think it's totally fine, because there's a lot of ways to make money, such as, coding or web design or translation, something that you could get paid for, which is focused not on sales, but on creating some kind of a product. So no problem at all. And I think the last point for this section is that I hear sometimes people saying they don't have any discernible skills, so that's why they cannot get anything started. And I'm having really hard time believing that. Like can you type on a keyboard, and can you copy information from a piece of paper onto the computer through a keyboard, and maybe use a Google Calendar and email? Well, then great, maybe with some effort you could become a virtual assistant. Or if you can listen and then type things that you listen on the computer, maybe with some training you can become a transcriptionist, right? I think the point is, like, wherever you are in your journey, there should be a game for you. And I could see how being online secretary might feel like underwhelming for you, and I think that's fine. I think you could just start in something and then do things outside of the hours, like getting more skills, more knowledge, and expanding your network, and so you could transition over time. In fact, like when I graduated, I couldn't get a job that I could see myself long term in for like over 2 years after I graduated. And even my first job was like washing dishes at a restaurant. Like it was like fast chain restaurant, which is fine thing to do, but I saw myself elsewhere. That's why I would go to work, and then I would come back and do stuff outside of the hours, trying to make this transition happen. So I mean, of course, it comes from a perspective of like being healthy and not having much in the way of responsibilities outside of like taking care of yourself, and I guess actually wanting to change something. So, but if that's you, I just don't see how not having any discernible skills is a thing. And the last point of the video is going to be about some of the downsides of the business like copywriting. And there are 2 things that I could see. One is this is a very mature industry with like very low growth rates, which is very different from something new where it's just the tailwind powered by some changes and shifts in the industry is just so big. It's like the runway is just so much more wider and longer. You could make more money and potentially faster too. Like right now, right now it's probably like a lot of e-commerce websites, micro brands, right? There's a huge power tailwind right now. Or think about maybe back in days, Google ads, Facebook ads completely redefined the way people spend money on advertising, right? From radio and TV, newspapers onto online mediums. And there was a lot of room for people to come in and develop these uncharted territories and make a lot of money. But then think back to copywriting. It's a very mature industry with not much going on in there, which means the growth rates are like very limited. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not crazy. It's nothing crazy. And which means you come in and then you have to play in the defined borders, and then there is already established supply and demand. You just kind of compete for the demand. So the potential just pales in comparison to something more trendy and you know, with a higher momentum. So, and number two is it's not really a passive income strategy where you could do work and then benefit from that work, like directly derive money from that work over the extended time of period. Like, again, some e-commerce websites are like that, where you build a store and then you drive your traffic, and then, you know, you have established customer base just coming in and buying things, and you just need to maintain the business, like subscription business models, or, you know, blogs, or even YouTube, where you make a video and then, you know, that video could bring you ad revenue over time. You don't need to do anything about that video anymore. In copywriting, you have to make like this much money, you have to do this much work every day. There is a royalty component to it, but I'm not sure how sustainable or big it is at this point. So maybe it is good. So yeah, there you have it, guys. That's the video. We talked about deciding what business to start on this channel, why I think following advice on Reddit could be a good opportunity for someone like me, and how you could use some of the ideas from these videos for your own things. Next video is going to be about specific steps to start in the copywriting business. Until then, have a great week, everyone.